Good morning, peace and blessings. It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless, and I'm back with another episode. This is going to be a very informative video. And as the title says, did the parties really switch? The truth they don't tell you. So, we talk about the parties. We're talking about the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, right? So, one narrative is that at one point, both platforms actually switched ideologies. Because I had these conversations with my guys and stuff like that, that, we know for a fact that the Democratic Party was the party that created the KKK and all the other, slavery and all the other really racist policies back in the day. And I come to find I was always taught it was the Republicans that was racist. But when you really do the history, it was the Democrats that started a lot of that, that were against ending slavery, that were pro Jim Crow. Everything that we thought that, well, at least I did, was taught that the Republican Party was racist. Actually, the Republican Party was the party that tried to end racism and ended up, was against Jim Crow. It was the party that actually ended racism. I mean, not racism, but slavery. So they say, yeah, that's true. But at some point, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, wings of the same bird, they end up switching ideologies, and the Democrats became the party of the civil rights for Black people and people of color and things of that nature. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go back in time to discover what the truth is as it pertains to the party switching and what actually happened. But before we do that, I definitely got to go ahead and flash this so we don't get into any trouble. I don't want no smoke. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right. So now that we got that out the way, back to what I was saying. Did the parties actually switch? Did they swap? What did they do? Right? And I have a very excellent video that I want to react to go ahead and get that information to see if the parties actually switched or not. So without further ado, wait a minute. I gotta exit that out. Let's get to the nitty-gritty here, okay? Because this has been a talking point for some time now that the party switched. So let's get this underway here. And what I'm going to do is react to this video and come in and out, with my commentary as well. Fair Use Act.
This is the story of one of the most controversial theories in American political history, the party switch. One of the great and often repeated myths in American politics is the great switch of the two primary political parties. One question often arises: how did the party of Abraham Lincoln become the party of the Southern conservative base? How did Democrats go from the party of segregation and lynching to the party of civil rights? Was there, in fact, a complete ideological switch? Let's clarify this situation. Was there really a full ideological switch between Democrats and Republicans? Today, we're going to break down the facts and the fiction behind this idea. What is the party switch theory? What is the historical reality? When did this supposedly occur? Was it ever true?
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
The theory suggests that Democrats and Republicans swapped ideological platforms during the 20th century, especially on issues like civil rights, race, and the role of government. In this version of history, the Republican Party supposedly embraced the policies and the voters of the old Southern Democrats, while Democrats claimed to have transformed into champions of civil rights and minority causes. The Democrat Party, as we know it, was shaped by Andrew Jackson, a populist but also a slaveholder. The Republican Party, founded in the 1850s, was the party of Abraham Lincoln and born in opposition to the expansion of slavery, but not
Okay. Wait a minute. What else would he say there?
the abolishment of slavery.
So he was against, so Abraham Lincoln was the Republican, Andrew Jackson was the Democrat. The Democrat, Andrew Jackson, was a slave owner and wanted to keep slavery alive and well. On the other hand, you have the Republican, Abraham Lincoln, who, although didn't want to abolish slavery, he didn't want it to expand. Interesting. Let's continue.
Please see our videos on Jackson and Lincoln. After the Civil War, Republicans pushed Reconstruction policies to protect the rights of freed Black people. Meanwhile, Southern Democrats created and enforced Jim Crow laws, maintaining segregation and opposing civil rights for African Americans. Well,
see, the Democrat Party was the party of Jim Crow after slavery, right?
Into the 20th century. Even Democrat President Woodrow Wilson was a staunch racist who wanted complete government control and created the Internal Revenue Service with the 16th Amendment in 1913 and the Federal Reserve to take more money from Americans. By the 1930s, under Franklin D. Roosevelt, the Democratic Party began courting working class voters, including Northern Black communities, with programs like the New Deal. But FDR did little to nothing to improve race relations in the South and refused to support anti-lynching legislation or desegregation of the military. He confiscated gold supplies from Americans, and he had the opportunity to desegregate the military and allow the immigration of Jews under persecution from Germany and Austria, and he refused. See our videos on FDR. The Democrats also supported labor unions, which the Republicans in general saw as a communist attempt to control effective business practices. The Northern Democrats tended to be supportive of civil rights for Blacks to gain their support away from.
Okay, so now we get to where the geographical, the North versus the South. The Northern Democrats were in favor of civil rights for Black people, but the Southern Democrats were against it, right? So that right there is where I believe that ideology comes from. They think it was the Republicans and the Republicans always pretty much remain the same on this. It was the Northern Democrats and the Southern Democrats that had this discrepancy. Let's continue.
From the Republican Party, which was business friendly and pushing for limited government involvement, but this divided the Democrats. Southern Democrats remained fiercely segregationist, while Northern Democrats grew more supportive of civil rights, causing growing tension within the party. The 1950s and 60s pressure mounted. Northern Democrats supported civil rights legislation to secure Black votes, while Southern Democrats resisted fiercely, trying to block Black.
Okay. Northern Democrats supported civil rights legislation to secure Black votes. So it wasn't about, you know, hey, we trying to help Black people. We just need their vote. Sounds similar to what's going on today. But the Southern Democrats resisted fiercely, trying to block Blacks from voting. So it was like a infighting between the Democratic Party, between the North and the South. This is key information here.
Blacks from voting. Senators like Strom Thurmond and Robert Byrd, the latter a former KKK member, and see our video on him, were both Democrats who led the charge against civil rights from within the Democratic Party. The other major opponent to civil and voting rights for Blacks in the South was Texas Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Now, this guy right here, we know, Lyndon B. Johnson, once said that I'll have these N-words voting Democrat for 200 years. Let's go back a little bit. So I want to get the full context of where he stood at this moment in time.
Strom Thurmond and Robert Byrd, the latter a former KKK member, and see our video on him, were both Democrats who led the charge against civil rights from within the Democratic Party. The other major opponent to civil and voting rights for Blacks in the South was Texas Senator Lyndon Baines Johnson, the future president, who, along with Democratic Senator Robert C. Byrd of West Virginia, fought tooth and nail to keep Blacks from receiving legal recourse under the Constitution. Senator Byrd himself had, in the early 1940s, recruited about 150 of his friends and relatives and other associates to create a new chapter of the Ku Klux Klan in Sophia, West Virginia.
So Lyndon B. Johnson, homie right here, Democrat, was running around with the KKK. Okay.
Yeah. He later changed his political position on civil rights as well, but remained a Democrat.
So he changed his ideology. So it's seeming like the Democrats did all the changing. I don't see no big change with the Republicans so far. Let's continue.
Despite his long history of being previously opposed to the various civil rights bills, LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Bam! Lyndon B. Johnson is the one that signed the Civil Rights Act of 1965. He was previously against Black people having civil rights, but he was the president that signed for it. Did he go to when he became the president, he must have went north and seen how it was moving, because he from Texas. Texas back then had to be super racist. So he became the president, went to Washington, D.C. Oh no, we gotta let these N-words vote so they can vote Democrat for the next 200 years. You see the play starting to form? I'm just saying.
Largely due to political pressure and the rise of figures like Republican Barry Goldwater, who opposed federal overreach and supported racial equality. This alienated many white Southern Democrats, also known as Dixiecrats, who had historically opposed integration and supported.
Hold on. Now, he said something about the Dixiecrats. Now, I've been hearing about that too. Let's go back a little bit.
LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, largely due to political pressure and the rise of figures like Republican Barry Goldwater, who opposed federal overreach and supported racial equality. This alienated many white Southern Democrats, also known as Dixie
White Southern Democrats, also known as Dixiecrats. Interesting.
Democrats, who had historically opposed integration and supported segregation. This was when the Republican Party began to appeal to Southern Democrats who wanted limited government in their lives, greater states' rights, and the social conservative platform of Republicans began to appeal to many Southerners who were drifting away from the racial mindset.
So Republicans, people in the South that was getting tired of all the racism and they wanted less government involvement in their lives, gravitated towards the Republican Party. Now, make no mistake, I am an independent. But when we talk about the historical context of racism, it's funny to me that it's the Democrats painting this narrative about the Republicans. You don't really hear the Republicans, trying to put that on the Democrats. But when you look at the history, overwhelmingly, the Democratic Party was the most racist. Just by watching this. This is giving a lot of historical context. I'm still waiting on the flip between Democrats and Republicans.
Goldwater's posture and perceived hardline stance against communism was in alignment with conservatives, but it was also used against him, a position which LBJ initially claimed publicly to be opposed to, despite his later creating the Gulf of Tonkin incident as a ruse to get legislation passed to send American combat troops to South Vietnam. Due to the creation of welfare and other entitlements by the Johnson administration in order to buy the black vote through generational patronage,
buy the black vote through generational patronage. Now, around this time, that's when the welfare system, Lyndon B. Johnson, I believe, created the welfare system that pushed the black man out of the home. So it's like, hey, we're going to give you women, because, hey, the women vote Democrat. They're going to raise the children to vote Democrat. We push the man out the house and we give them welfare. So we give them free stuff and they're going to vote for us. This has been the playbook for the Democrats since Lyndon Baines Johnson in the 60s. We're going to buy your vote, even though the man was obviously historically racist. But he's this racist man, Lyndon B. Johnson, that was running around with the KKK, was the one that signed the Civil Rights Act. Is that not suspicious to you? I'm just saying.
Democrats had a durable base among minorities, urban voters, and socially liberal intellectuals. Also, Southern Democrats were anti-legal immigration into their states, while the Northern Democrats promoted legal immigration. Also, Southern Protestants were typically more religious and church-going, while the Northern, East, and West Coast Democrats began to walk away from organized religion and adopted pro-Marxist platforms, which were deemed by Southern conservatives as anti-American. This all triggered a backlash, and Johnson famously said, "We have lost the South for a generation, but we have the black vote for the next 200 years.
Bam! We have lost the South for a generation. See, they was thinking long term back then. We had to sacrifice a generation in the South. But I had a black vote. We'll have the black vote. The Democrats will have the black vote for the next 200 years. And what do we have now? This was 60 to 70 years ago. You looking at this man right here was the president. A racist, self-proclaimed racist. Ran around with the KKK, Democrat. That put the legislation in law for civil rights. I would argue to say we had civil rights already. After slavery, just think about it. If we went to go vote and it was some white folks trying to stop us from voting, all we had to do you don't ask another man for your civil rights. God gave you your rights. My rights are God given. But if you go to them and say, "Can I vote?" instead of telling them I'm gonna vote and I dare you to touch me and see what happened, we get a whole bunch of men and we go down there and vote. Who gonna stop us? I bet you if them black Muslims, if Malcolm X and the black Muslim said we going to vote, who gonna stop them? You know? And if you put your hands on me, I'm gonna show you why you would never put your hands on nobody else. That's the mentality that you needed to have at that time and now. But we have lost the South for a generation, but we have the black vote for the next 200 years. Black people vote for the Democrats at a 90%, about 90% of black folks vote Democrat. This man wasn't lying. And it don't seem like it's gonna slow down no time soon. Now, if you got two parties, you got one party that just know you're gonna vote for them, so they not gonna do nothing for you. Then you got the other party that pretty much know you're not gonna vote for them, so they ain't gonna do nothing for you. So you have no political appeal because they already know what you're gonna do. So what you need to do is push away from the Democrat Party, push away from the Republican Party, independent. And what we need to do is come up as a culture of people, as a race of people, and come up with our own agenda. If you want if black people can get on the court, if you want the black vote, this is our list of demands. Until we could do that, we will be politically irrelevant. But let's continue. I don't want to rant.
This was the moment when many Southern white voters, alienated by civil rights policies and federal welfare expansion, began to shift toward the Republican Party, not because the GOP embraced racism, but because it promoted limited government, states' rights, and traditional family
values. See, they went to the Republican Party because they was just conservative. They wasn't with all that liberal stuff and all this racism and, so maybe that's what a lot of people get it confused. They didn't go from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party they wanted to be racist. The Republican Party was the least racist out of the two, obviously, and they just wanted to have less government. They were religious and they just wanted to live a conservative lifestyle, family. You know what I'm saying? It's very interesting to hear this from a historical standpoint to add some context to this conversation. But I could understand why people thought that the platform switched, but it just never made sense to me. How would one platform, one political party say to the other political party, let's switch ideologies? Doesn't make sense.
values. Another factor aiding in the shift was the Vietnam War, which also divided the country along political lines, and LBJ took the greatest criticism from his own party as a result. Democrats were heavily divided on Vietnam as well. The majority of politically liberal Democrats opposed their own Democrat President Johnson regarding U.S. involvement, while more conservative Democrats and Republicans either took a neutral or pro-American involvement in fighting communism. In 1968, Richard M. Nixon ran on the presidential GOP ticket, and he courted disaffected Southern whites using code words like law and order, states' rights, and opposition to forced busing, while still maintaining the GOP support for Black rights, which still divided Democrats. This opened the door for Republicans, notably Richard Nixon and later Ronald Reagan, who used what has become known as the Southern strategy to gain support in the South by appealing to concerns about federal overreach against states' rights and cultural change. Richard Nixon's Southern strategy emphasized law and order and opposition to federal busing policies, which was a big deal to Democrats, appeals that resonated with voters frustrated.
See, these are the receipts. The Republicans, it's crazy. They seem to be the ones that was really trying to implement policies for that oppose discrimination,
By cultural and political upheaval. Nixon had campaigned on getting out of Vietnam, which satisfied many of both parties' voters and also added Southern whites to Republican rolls. Nixon also ended the Democrat-created Tuskegee syphilis experiment program created by Democrats, among other legislation. And see our video on Nixon. Ronald Reagan later unified these groups into a larger conservative coalition, business leaders, evangelicals, and working class whites, under the banner of small government and anti-socialist policies. Democrats became the party of urban centers, progressives, minorities, and coastal elites. They eventually abandoned the Ku Klux Klan, which they had created after the Civil War, and
bam, they created the Democrat Party, created the Ku Klux Klan after the Civil War to enforce Jim Crow. But watch what Reagan do.
Supported for a century because the hate group had become too toxic. Republicans attracted religious conservatives, rural voters, small business owners, and working class traditionalists, especially in the South and Midwest, as progressive Democrats, especially in the North, turned away from supporting religion, which conservatives found appalling. Yes, it is true that some Democrat figures switched parties, like Strom Thurmond of South Carolina, but the idea that the GOP adopted the racist legacy of the Democratic South is misleading. And
it's misleading. They did not adopt the racial ideology of the Democrats. The Republicans did not do it. These are the receipts here. We went through a lot of different presidents, and it's a nice timeline to this video. So I definitely wanted to, add some context here and there, but it speaks for itself. Yeah, that's a false narrative.
And patently false. The Ku Klux Klan, for instance, was never embraced by the GOP. In fact, the Reagan administration helped dismantle it legally.
Bam! Didn't know that. Reagan dismantled it. Let's see what happened.
And financially, effectively destroying it. Over the years, Democrats embraced more progressive positions on gun control, gender identity, immigration, and race. They allied with activist groups like Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and others whose critics argued further.
Okay, so we could pause that right there, man. I'm gonna take that down for a minute. But I mean, we pretty much good on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know, like, most of the people that I have conversations with about this this swap or whatever supposed to happen, they like to say that most racist white supremacist group tend to vote for Republicans and white nationalists. I would argue that Black nationalists would vote Democrat too. I mean Republican too, because they're more conservative. I don't think it has anything to do with a racial ideology as that's concerned. Like if you say like the KKK or skinheads, they tend to roll with the Republican Party. That's typically because of the conservative values. Less government. A nationalist would by definition side with the Republican Party over the Democrats, because the Democrats, they pro immigration, you know what I'm saying, and the Republicans are just kind of like, no, this is ours. We're nationalists, just like Black nationalists. You know what I'm saying? I could see a Black Muslim voting for a Republican. Because the policies, when you learn more about the policies, it just makes more sense that they would. I don't think it was a racial thing. But hey, man, I think we can leave that right there. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless. Man, I be hating this here, man. I gotta get my thing together right here. But we'll figure that out. It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless. We love y'all. Until next time, we should see you soon. Peace and blessings.